It's the Pittsburgh Golf Now Par 4, first edition for 2026. I'm Matt Gajtka along with Zach Weiss. And the topic du jour, or the overarching theme of today's show, the first of the calendar year as we ring in the competitive season, is leadership, it seems like. A lot of leadership themes weaving in and out of the prime topics of the day. Zach, it feels weird to be talking golf. It always does this time of year for me, but especially this winter. So I guess we're just going to steer into the skid there. And as far as I'm concerned, might be a little bit helpful to help us get through what has been a pretty tough January and early February stretch.
Roses are red, violets are blue. People continue not to shovel their walkways. This is February, Matt.
That is what it is, and that's where we are right now. But it's that time of year where you turn on the TV on the weekend especially, and you get to watch golfers in much better climates than the one you're currently in, if you live anywhere near where we do. And you have that sense of envy, but it's a good sense of envy as far as I'm concerned. Y'all right over there. Looks like the perspective's changing. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're good. I was just simulating the East Coast weather.
Oh, yeah. Dark and at times mysterious, I suppose.
Apparently.
But, let's dig into that first shot because big news, honestly, and maybe news that, at least in one regard, we could have seen coming down the pipe as Brooks Koepka makes his return to the PGA Tour as they get it rolling in 2026. We had the strange start with no Kapalua, so everything feels a little bit different this year as we have our first redefection, I suppose, from LIV back to the PGA Tour and under new commissioner Brian Rolap. The tour, Zach, has a different tone, doesn't it? It feels like they are not afraid of breaking some precedent, of going back upon previous decisions and making some adjustments, being overall in a sense of innovation, I would say, in how they've gone about their business. And that might tick some people off, including their own membership. But this is a totally different era for the PGA Tour, just welcoming back Brooks Koepka. Yes, he had to pay some penalties. He'll continue to pay some penalties in terms of not being able to get some equity in the PGA Tour. That's a new program. So I guess we'll see how much that ends up hurting him in the end. But Koepka's back, and for the most part, welcome back with open arms, it seems, with the treatment of CBS and giving him the Tiger treatment in a lot of cases, showing a lot of his shots when he's well out of contention. So we have that. We have Patrick Reed also at the last minute before the new LIV season started, dropping out, joining the DP World Tour, where he has been at home in the past and has won recently and won again, in fact, this past week. So he's got 2 wins already on the DP World Tour. And so he reveals to a reporter a couple of weeks ago that he wasn't technically on board with LIV, even though he did the media day and did all the preseason interviews and all that stuff. So it feels like the Wild West. I don't know if we're quite there all the way, but almost a sense of anything goes here. So how are you making sense of these 2 player moves and what that might mean for where the balance of power is at and where we might be going in the next, I don't know, say 12 to 18 to 24 months?
Well, in honor of the current generation and lingo, I guess with no Kapalua, I'll spend 15 seconds and waste time with PGA Tour, and golf season right now has been all gas and stop the cap. I mean, there's only so much that you can say about that, Matt. But really, now that we've completely touched base with the 18 to 21 demographic, let's touch all of the other bases here. And quite frankly, it's surprising and not surprising at the same time. LIV has had the opportunity to prove themselves and time again have fumbled the ball. And you've had defections before. You've had guys that have played themselves out either due to poor play, contracts, whatever have you. And it just shows to me that LIV Golf is not a serious tour. If you have a guy that's masquerading, that's not necessarily under a contract, it's not good. And when you have multiple guys that are on tour, established guys, especially with Bryson DeChambeau, guys like Paul Casey who are crying foul now at the one differentiating factor, the 54 holes now going to 72 holes. It's clear that LIV was trying to do everything they could to get ranking points. Promises be darned. And the players do not appreciate it. Sergio Garcia, another one that really voiced his displeasure over it. The only one that really seems to be happy about it is Jon Rahm. And Rahm was a guy that I think a lot of people were hoping when Brooks Koepka came back would come back. DeChambeau's case is going to be a little bit more of an interesting case. There's no doubt about that. DeChambeau signed through this year, so I think he's going to trudge along through this year, grin and bear it. And I think when you have a person like Bryson who's shown what he's capable of on the golf course and even more importantly off the golf course, I think that offer's always going to be back on the table if he wants for him to join the PGA Tour in any capacity, play that limited schedule with just the signature events, and kind of move on and move forward and probably do more of his own thing where it's not as much about the tournaments, but doing things his way. And I think he's found that a lot of success in doing things his way as well. And then really, in terms of star power, that would leave Rahm. You have other good players, not A players, but a guy like Joaquin Niemann, who's shown his ability to kind of maneuver his way around the golf course. A guy like Tyrrell Hatton, who's always found form in the majors here in recent years, especially last year. But again, touching on the guys that you mentioned on, Brooks Koepka has shown a little bit more vulnerability. Of course, coming back to the tour is a vulnerable step in and of itself. He had his reasons, mainly family-based was what he was willing to say on the record. And his play has left a lot to be desired, but he knows what it is. It's his putting, it's the flat stick, and he's gone over in press conferences what he's trying to do to find a way, and sticks one close on 16 in the first round and unable to cash in. So he's kind of a victim of that in his own regard, but for him just to be out there and to kind of control things is really, really important for him. And as for Patrick Reed, and, Pat Perez kind of was before both of them, quite frankly, because Pat was ready to join the PGA Tour champions, and he's a guy that has had to pay some dues with times retroactive to his start and his contract, and obviously getting penalized on top of it for the broadcasting rule that he never wanted on top of that too. So Brian Rolapp has really laid his terms clear. He's laid his chips on the table. He's been firm and direct on it and gotten support from all the necessary committees. And Patrick Reed's a guy that made his decision. And Patrick Reed never really struck me as a team guy anyways, to be perfectly honest with you, Matt. And he's a guy that, yeah, you mentioned the 2 wins that he's had, but let's not forget that was sandwiched by a playoff loss as well. So he's leading the race to Dubai, something he said he's always wanted to win. He's somebody that's definitely at this point more than on pace for a President's Cup pick when that really shapes into form. Could be a potential Ryder Cup pick because let's face it, you can get over some of the popularity if you just find a way to be competitive. And these are 2 guys that love wearing the swoosh. 2 guys, well, at one point, Patrick Reed's kind of without sponsors in that regard now, but 2 guys that are kind of similar. They kind of go by the beat of their own drum. They're stubborn to a fault, but darn, when they play good, is it really, really entertaining. And there might not be, we're going to talk about another guy that's finding form a little bit later in this, but Patrick Reed's a guy that there may not be anybody, male or female, in any walk of golf right now that is on a hotter streak than what Patrick Reed is on right now. And you know what? Good for him. He's done it his way. Regrets. He's had a few. But regardless of that, I mean, Patrick Reed's a guy that is, when he does well, it's good for the game. And regardless of whether you like the man, you dislike the man, it's impossible not to have an opinion on the man. And in a sense, that's kind of similar to wrestling, right? You don't necessarily, it's not about being a good guy. It's not about being a bad guy. It's about getting reactions in that former kind of fund about social media, the piff that we all piffed at the piffed. I mean, that's really what it is. He would be right there just because he has personality, and just for him to be able to have an opportunity to get back on the tour. I mean, he's pretty much all but secured a membership for 27 at this point in time. It's good for him. It's good for the game, and it's really laid the cards on the table. And Liv's response was for the world ranking, and even they weren't happy about that. I think good on Trevor Immelman and the committee for making the right decision. Liv Golf did make the changes that deserved getting official world golf ranking points, and there's definitely a place for it. But there's also a place where the best golfers in the world are majoritively on the PGA Tour. And the PGA Tour has really stepped up its game and put a full court press in terms of how it formats its events, how it schedules its events, and how it prioritizes and advertises its events. And Liv Golf has definitely gotten stale. The whole Greg Norman crusade, he didn't deliver on the main thing he promised, which was WGR points. That only came after he left. And even still, the players are still not happy with what they got. So it was bound to not make anybody happy. I think they found a compromise. Liv got to a degree what they wanted. The PGA Tour absolutely got what they wanted. And you basically have to get top tens, which is exactly what a guy like Jon Rahm does. He wants it to be like tournament golf. He wants it to be 72 holes. And quite frankly, if you're not in the top 10 on a limited field event, sure. I mean, maybe you don't get points. It's understandable. And for as much time as they take off, there's a spot for that as well. End of the day, no one was going to be happy with the situation. I think they did what they could to at least say, look, we heard both sides. We wish you well. We're putting our hands up. We're moving on to the next one. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, yes, golf in a sense is more divided, but I think in a way, golf is also clearer. It's clear that right now the top show in town is the PGA Tour. It seems like players are realizing that, whether they're in or out of contract, and at this point it's adapt or perish. Some of them might have commitments. Again, what happens in a year's time with Bryson will be especially interesting. Frankly, I don't think Bryson necessarily needs either tour. He could just do his own thing, and people want to pay to see it because they have an opinion. Again, like or dislike the man, Bryson moves the needle. And there's always a place for the game in that. And Bryson also is a steward of the game. He's fascinated by the history. He's a fascinating individual on his own. And he's someone that could always generate revenue for himself, others, and raise awareness in between. So really, as great as it is that we're spending this first shot on Koepka and Reed, let's have this conversation again in about a year's time, see where Bryson DeChambeau lies, where the truth is within his statements, which I think that it's all true, but I think where that stone turns is going to really speak to the future of LIV Golf.
Yeah, and let me correct myself from earlier. You were saying there was a previous defection from LIV Golf. Eugenio Chacarra also stepped away from LIV, but he was also on the outs in terms of results. So, but he did speak out about how he felt like that it wasn't the deal that he signed up for. So that was maybe your first leak or your first transfer the other way when we're talking about decent talent. But the personalities, you mentioned it, the personalities of Koepka and Reed, just as important, if not more important, than their actual results. And, well, with Koepka, he hasn't done much when it comes to results in the last year or so, really since his previous major win at the PGA Championship, which is going to be 3 years ago, by the way, in a couple of months. But the fact that they are names and that they have decided that LIV wasn't for them, yes, this is a turn definitively in the opposite direction. And like you said, LIV had a window here, and it just never quite reached that critical mass, whether we be talking about the number of prominent players who made the jump over, or whether we're talking about the headspace that it took up in the golf world. LIV has, it looks like, has reached a point where it's missed its chance to make the impact that it wanted to. And wow, it's not for a lack of spending on the PIF side of things from the Republic of Saudi Arabia. It was quite the layout, and it has been quite the layout, and it continues to be quite the layout from the dollars and cents perspective too. So I don't know if I want to call it a waste necessarily. I think that it also inspired a lot of change on the PGA Tour, and so maybe a guy like Phil Mickelson was correct in one way, in that it needed a disruption, but it doesn't appear that it's going to be a long-lasting one. I would not bet on LIV being around past this year. I feel like there's a great deal of uncertainty there, even though contracts might go beyond this year. So, boy, so much is still up in the air. And we all know that it seems like the rules can change on a day-by-day basis. And also, what can change on a day-by-day basis, Zach, is who might be challenging Scottie Scheffler for the title of best men's pro golfer in the world. You might have said it's definitely Rory McIlroy as of 6 or 8 months ago. You might have said as of a year ago or so it was going to be Xander Schauffele, but as of right now, the top money winner on the PGA Tour is Chris Gotterup, the native of New Jersey, who just missed out on making the Ryder Cup last year. He was definitely in the conversation, but didn't get a chance to play at Bethpage Black, which would have been essentially a home game for him. But the big burly man, the man who hits it long and also can mix up with some trajectories and add some interesting aspects to it. He's not just your typical bomber, but he certainly brings the speed off the tee and brings that power that you pretty much need in the modern game. He wins at Weiss Management this past week. He overtakes Hideki Matsuyama, who had a rough finish there. And in a playoff, Gotterup now has 4 PGA Tour wins and 2 already this season. So is this the man who's going to step up here? Because it sure seems like Scottie Scheffler's floor is right where it always has been, and maybe even got raised. He played terribly, by his own admission, in the first round down in Phoenix, and he still finished just a shot out of the playoffs. So even when he's bad, he's really good. There is definitely a need for someone to challenge him, for sure, to make things more compelling. Is it Goddard? What are your thoughts on what he's shown over the last, I guess you'd go back even more than a year at this point?
I mean, if you didn't have Scotty Scheffler's Chef Boyardee impression last year, I mean, who knows how many more wins that he would have riled off, quite frankly. But, I mean, I still remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, Matt, that we had me on assignment in Ohio for the Corn Ferry event out by the Ohio State University, and got a one-on-one with Chris Goddard up at that point when not as many knew who he was. But it felt in that moment, even though there were clearly nerves and there was some pressing going on just to be able to secure his card, it wasn't like he was a big thinker in terms of an interview. He was a guy that was to the point, said what he needed to say, said it with conviction, and it feels the same way with his game. He talks the way that he plays. It kind of matches up, which is kind of fascinating. And I think if you had seen where he was on the 18th hole in the final day of regulation, and you look at that leaderboard and you see he's tied with Scotty Scheffler at that point, and you see Matsuyama's kind of looks like he's figured it out, you said maybe game over. But the way that he was able to hit that shot when he needed to, and yeah, Matsuyama played that bunker shot on the 72nd poorly, and I think there was just a microcosm at that point. But, I mean, Goddard's had a couple of really, really good weeks, and anybody that doubts it can look at the tweet that he fired off, which he actually revealed earlier today on a YouTube show, on Dan Rappaport's show. He actually said that was kind of a part of the text chain that he had in college anytime he or the team experienced success. And he's continued that on, and there's kind of been a little bit forward where it's the jokingly give me my money kind of a thing. So he definitely has some good personality. I think it's, again, good. We talk about personalities. We talk about that. But he's building a brand. We talked about Patrick Reed being President Cup selection. I think Chris Goddard, who's jumped into fourth in the standings at this point already, just off the bridge of all of these wins and these results, he's somebody that definitely would make a lot of sense for a President's Cup, and is someone that can kind of channel the emotion of a Ryder Cup, even though that's so far down the line at this point. So is he up there with Scotty? I'm not going to overreact. I mean, if we had had this conversation a week ago, we would have been talking about Justin Rose again, how at 45 years old, he's turned father time into an asset. And just not only did he win, but he lapped the field and then some. It almost looked like Lance Armstrong's Tour de France wins without the doping, quite frankly. And it was one of those things where, yeah, Chris was able to do it from behind on Sunday. And say what you will, it's a legitimate event. I mean, that's an event that everybody's watching because it's the appetizer for right before the Super Bowl. And of course, you have the raucous atmosphere in the 16th hole at all times. But it's a challenging course in some respects, and for him to be able to hold it together when you have major champions in Matsuyama, a major champion and multi-major champion in Scheffler, just right there on the first page of the leaderboard next to your name, it does take a lot of moxie this young into your PGA Tour career. So it's clear that he's ready for the moment. Now, how would that fare against Scotty Scheffler? Who's to say? I'm not ready to do that yet. I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think that's fair to Scotty, but man, the start that you've seen just jumps off the page. It's impossible not to notice who he is, that he's consistently done it on his terms. And that's what makes it exciting. It's not like he's played out of character. He's really shown up when he's needed to, when he's had his name called. And I mean, I could see him rattling off so many. I mean, to see that he's going to be in all of these limited field events, to see him rattle off a couple more in those, to see him possibly contending in a major championship, let alone win one. The possibilities are certainly endless. It's ultimately on him to see how he can sustain this quick start. But man, what a quick start it's been, Matt.
And apologies to Chris, but I could see him as kind of a Koepka part two. He looks the part for sure. Like I said, the body type, the power game. It remains to be seen how he ends up executing if he gets himself into the mix in the majors. But it feels a lot like that, the rise of Koepka from about 7 or 8 years ago. And like I was saying, though, Scheffler, he's threatening to run away with this whole pro golf thing at the moment. So I feel like as a spectator, someone is needed to step up and challenge in some of these spots. And I'd love to see some sort of a major championship showdown with either Scheffler and Goddard, Scheffler and McIlroy, Scheffler and you name it. Just someone who can go toe to toe with him at least for a short stretch and give us some drama in the biggest tournaments of the year. And hey, speaking of the biggest tournaments of the year, we're about a month away from the Players Championship. Not that jump so far ahead, but hey, the PGA Tour started the conversation with a very bold proclamation in their latest Players Championship TV promo, in which they say right at the end of it, March will be major. Zach, we've heard the PGA Tour talk about it's the best field outside of the majors, maybe even just the best field period in golf. We've heard it discussed as the unofficial fifth major over and over again. But I think this is as bold and as outright as we've seen the tour itself proclaim that, hey, this event deserves to be on the same pedestal as the PGA Championship, as the two Opens, as the Masters. So do you think this approach can work? Maybe is this the only approach that can work if we're ever going to see another major added to the annual slate? Of course, the LPGA has 5 majors, so it's not unprecedented in an individual sport. It's not unprecedented in golf to have 5 majors. We've been with these same 4 majors for well over a half century. Since maybe the 1950s is when it really got agreed upon that these were the big 4. But for me, there's always room for change, and I think it's refreshing to see the tour actually sticking its neck out. And again, I think it's the Brian Rolap effect. He's showing that there's a new sheriff in town, for lack of a better phrase, and he's going to push. And I do like that because it makes me feel like that golf's not going to be stuck in its ways forever with a guy like that in charge of one of the most powerful entities in golf. So as far as I'm concerned, Zach, I like it. What are you thinking about this? And do you feel like it's a worthy argument at all that the players could rise to the level of an official major, as official as this actually is? Really, it's all unofficial. It's all just agreed upon by those of us in the golf world.
Well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? But man, is this a terrible shot. The March is March Madness, and it is incredibly tough to overcome that. Every college basketball, really the 1 month of the year that it gets is March. And to me, this is the PGA Tour. This is as much of a reach with the PGA Tour as LIV has been a reach. And there just comes a point in time where the PGA Tour is trying to take a stranglehold on the one thing that it can. The fact that the PGA Tour does not own the rights to 4 of the 4 most meaningful tournaments on the calendar. And it's trying to make its power play, and credit to it for doing so and for doing it loudly. Instead of just saying, oh, well, this is the 5th major, they're saying, no, this is a major. This is our 5th major. And it feels like they've treated it as such. They've kissed it, but they haven't gone all the way. But I don't see Bryson DeChambeau there. I don't see Jon Rahm there. And that's really, really hard to overcome when you're saying you have the best field in golf. And those are 2 names that immediately you can say, yeah, but, and if you wanted to circumvent that, maybe you borrow from the USGA. Maybe you say, look, here's some qualifiers to get in the field. And even a guy like Sergio Garcia, a major champion in his own right, has sectional qualified for the US Open because it means something to him. These LIV guys have tried that haven't made it. So if they open it up and the PGA Tour says, well, if we want to make this the best field, we're going to have to at least make an olive branch. And if they can't qualify on their own merit, that's on them. That's not on us. Then maybe you have a case. But, I mean, there's something that makes everyone unique. The Masters, it's the tradition. It's guys that have won that are getting their last hurrah that maybe otherwise wouldn't have. With the PGA Championship, it's the story of the professionals. It's the story of maybe the journeyman that hasn't had that opportunity. With the US Open, it's the fact that it is open. It's the fact that you have that sectional and local qualifying, and maybe you're always going to have the Tigers, the Scotties, the McIlroys, whatever have you, but you can always have your John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmitz, and his name is your name too. And there's a lot to say about that. And the Open Championship, it's the same way. So for me, there's no problem with it, but the Players Championship to me is a little bit too early in the year. Just March Madness is a lot to overcome from a geographic standpoint on the calendar. I get packing everything in with these events and everything, but it's not at a distinguishable enough time of the year for me. And also, in addition to overcoming that, there isn't anything that makes it unique. You can argue that TPC Sawgrass is what makes it unique, but there's a lot of people that, even Eamon Lynch this morning, when we're recording this, maybe we need to take this globally. Maybe that's your answer to Live, but then it loses the one bit of charm and personality that it does have, that 17th hole at Sawgrass. You have a signature hole that everybody's going to want to tune into to see, okay, how many of these guys are just like us and going to hit the ball into the water? So there's still the traditions of the championship parking spot that Cam Smith lost, and there's always the traditions of everything along that line, but there isn't anything special enough for me to say, yes, concretely, wholeheartedly, I am ready to invest in this being the 5th major. But at the same time, the fact that Brian Rolapp is willing to have the stones to try to break this tradition and to break this wall gives it a chance. Ultimately, the judge, jury, and the executioner isn't going to be any committee, isn't going to be any boys and girls club. It's going to be the fans, and it's going to be social media reaction. There will be more eyes on it just because there's a curiosity factor. Because you've been so aggressive, this is your one chance to do it. But if you make any, and I mean any, mistake, then you have completely squandered it, and there will be no turning back. So everything has to be done to show that this is a worthwhile event. Everything has to be shown that this is the top tier experience, and everything has to be shown where there's drama, there's compelling names, everything. If somebody like what happened at the Open Championship all those years ago happens and Ben Curtis beats Thomas Bjorn, that ship might sail. They're going to want a big winner, and the broadcasts certainly are going to want a big winner where they can tell the casuals about the Schefflers, about the McIlroys. They got lucky when McIlroy won it last year, and it ended up beginning to create a star in J.J. Spaun, which ended up happening at Oakmont Country Club at that U.S. Open. So the opportunity is there, but what are they going to do with it, and are the top names going to be able to be the top names on that leaderboard? Because without everything going correctly, it's going to answer itself at the end of those 4 days. Quite frankly, that's what it's going to boil down to. Personally, do I think it belongs where it is on the calendar? No, and because of where it's at on the calendar, I can't consider it major.
Yeah, that's a great counter argument. And ironically, Zach, I think if it were where it used to be in the month of May, of course it was in March before that, then it was in May, then pushed back to March as the PGA Championship was moved from August to May. Follow if you can. But I think if it went Masters in April, Players in May, then you have, of course, the regular U.S. Open and Open the following 2 months, and then the PGA Championship capping off the regular season, or whatever you want to call it, in August. I think that's a pretty good lineup, and I think that could actually work. But there's another counter argument, too, that I'm sympathetic toward, and you touched upon it as well. That would put 4 of the 5 majors in the United States. It would put 2 of the 5 majors within, a 3 or 4 hour drive of each other, and those 2 are always at the same golf courses, too, so lack of variety as well as just geographic location, I think would be certainly 2 dings against this argument. So it's not easy to break tradition in a sport like golf, or any sport that's established at all, but especially a sport like golf, it seems. So I don't know if it's a winning push for the PGA Tour, but I am with you in that I'm happy that they're trying, and I'm happy that we're seeing some deviance from the status quo, or some desire to deviate from the status quo, I suppose would be the best way to put it. We've seen it with Liv, of course, but now we're seeing it from inside the actual establishment, which for me is even more refreshing. The fact that you could maybe even count on the PGA Tour to push for some significant change. All right, just a few minutes left here, Zach, and let's go from the men's tour to the women's tour to the LPGA Tour. And not the way that new commissioner Craig Kessler wanted to get his leadership tenure started. It was certainly not with a bang, as the LPGA's Tournament of Champions a couple of weeks ago was shortened to 54 holes, with, coincidentally, Nelly Korda leading. She ended up getting awarded the title, and she earned it through 54 holes, obviously. But it was very questionable, starting with a postponement and then an outright cancellation of the final round due to some much colder than usual temperatures in Central Florida in the Orlando area. But the players were perhaps complaining about the fact they could hurt themselves on the frozen ground. Meanwhile, prior to the pros going out, the celebrities from the Pro-Am portion of the tournament went out there and played. And said it was fine. Annika Sorenstam herself said it was fine. She was part of the Pro-Am, so that certainly didn't help the PR effort for the LPGA Tour. In the end, it just seemed like a major misstep for Craig Kessler and the new leadership on a tour that needs strong leadership and has, I think, struggled ever since we saw Mike Wan move over to the USGA. It's difficult as the LPGA Tour, Zach, to carve out a little bit of attention span, and the fact you just totally punt a Sunday in what I think is a prime golf viewing window for me was quite regrettable. And of course, the way it went on, the way it felt like it was a total hasty decision and not the right one made when you could have just played it the next day on a Monday when weather was going to be better. Just a lot of missteps there. And I'm not sure Craig Kessler has explained himself thoroughly. I don't know if he necessarily has to. Maybe he has to his players and to the folks who are within the organization. But this is a tour that needs to be transparent, in my view, to gain more trust, to feel more legitimate in the eyes of the greater sporting public. And this was the case of the tour and Kessler, by extension, falling flat on its face for me. So what was your takeaway from that whole situation, which still seems to be resonating even a week and change later, just because of how strange the whole situation was?
Well, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And I think there still has been a lot of distrust among LPGA players since Mike Wan left. And so far, those feelings have been very substantiated. The Solheim Cup situation that happened at Inverness was a complete disaster, where fans are waiting hours upon hours when golfers are already on the back nine of their matches. And there's just no place for a lack of tournament organization. This is your chance to make an impression, and also make such an impression that fans want to travel to see their favorite players. And you want to differentiate yourself from other tours. You want young ladies to see their role models in person, get that autograph, get that picture, walk these 18 holes with their favorite golfers who they aspire to be, or maybe even play with someday. Although it's harder to substantiate that because some of these ladies are retiring earlier than ever for many rightfully and justifiable reasons. And a huge credit to Beth Ann Nichols from Golf Week, who's really provided a lot of information and reporting about this, a lot of which you mentioned before this, Matt. The fact that it wasn't okay enough for the golfers to actually come out on the course and play the season opener, but that the celebrities in 30 degrees had no problems hitting their shots. And I think it's the most damning thing is if Annika Sorenstam says at noon that this tournament can be played, then you play the damn tournament. That there's no way around it. If you want to ask the players, feel free to ask the players. But I mean, if that's even a problem, let's look at the calendar here, Matt. The tournament was January 29th to February 1st. When's the next tournament? Isn't it the February the 4th? No, it's February the 19th. You have nothing but time to fix this event. If you can't get it together on Monday, then you have Tuesday. I mean, you can just go down the line and just figure out a way to make this play. And for these golfers, for their first tournament under the new commissioner to not be completed is terrible. And I think even if you ask Nelly Korda in her heart of hearts, she'd rather play the 72 holes. And if she wins, amazing. That's great. Her game's back on track. But if she doesn't, at least we went out and we put the best product out on that course for the fans, which is what the whole point of it is. If I'm a fan and I was there on Sunday and I saw John Smoltz hit a few shots and then I said, you know what, screw this, I'm going home. No offense to John Smoltz. I mean, those Braves rotations were fantastic, but I would be pretty PO'd, Matt. I mean, I would be demanding for a refund, and it's not the course's fault. I mean, the grounds crews working tirelessly to make this thing playable. It was clearly not unplayable if these celebrities are going out there and playing and trying to hack it around. There's no doubt about that. So you only get one chance to make a first impression. And for this to be the first impression, the fact that the players are left peeved and wanting more, he apologized, rightfully so, and it's early, so of course they're going to understand and forgive. But there are a lot of lessons that need to be taken away from this. But right now, from a fan perspective, there's nothing to believe it's anything less than same old LPGA Tour, because that was what was given to them.
Yeah, it's a sad development at the start of a new tenure that I think a lot of people were very optimistic about, and it could still turn out obviously well. He's hoping he's got a lot of runway left, but it is an unconscionable decision in my view, and I feel like you're on the same page with me on that one. To cut that one short with your top gun, your most prolific, well, I guess attention grabber in Nelly Korda, if not necessarily the number one player right now, but the one you want to stand out or at least have a chance, and you take away an opportunity to see her try to hold off a star-studded field. By definition, it's a tournament of champions, so it is one of your marquee events, even though it's not a major or anything like that. So I guess we double back to the whole major debate there. We do have a live comment, Zach, before we go. David Edwards, 8033, wants to know our thoughts on the win for Elvis Smiley on LIV at in Saudi Arabia this past week. They played under the lights. We didn't talk about the LIV season opener because obviously the news was pretty much elsewhere, but it is an intriguing young talent, and Elvis Smiley joined the All-Australian team in Ripper GC. They're headed back home to Adelaide next, actually, so that'll be, I'm sure, another fantastic atmosphere. Not saying LIV hasn't done some good things, especially when it comes to the in-person experience. But yeah, as for Smiley, he seems like a very interesting prospect, a lefty as well, and someone that you can keep your eye on, a player who has taken advantage of the opportunity given to him. And so you can't hold that against him. That's what makes the whole LIV thing so complicated, Zach, is that you see accomplishments over there, but you just don't know how much credence to give them. You don't know how that might translate to the greater golf world at large. To the credit of DeChambeau and Koepka, they both won majors while competing rather sporadically on LIV just because of the nature of the schedule. So there's a lot there, but we're not taking anything away from the players who are there for the most part. They're there because they gained some form of notoriety, and in the case of Smiley, he's there because of his promise, like a Michael Lasasso as well on Phil Mickelson's team.
Well, certainly, and you're trying to get as much of these young players away from the PGA Tour as you can, because that can be your neutralizing chip as well, in addition to LIV smartly making things global, which is what a lot of people have called for the PGA to do instead of doing the same old TPC courses. You said making the most of the opportunities. Yeah, if he has a couple more really solid results, very much could be invited to Augusta National Golf Club, and then people are forced to pay attention to what he does and what he's able to do. It legitimizes it in a very big way. That's why you get OWGR points. So absolutely, if he gets the opportunity, then he deserves to have the opportunity. Again, just like the case with Gajtka, I'm not going to overreact on 1 or 2 weeks here, but if he can keep this going, I mean, it's similar to a Joaquin Niemann then off to the races, but he hopes he does a little bit more than Joaquin and what the majors schedule presents. But absolutely, it was a good win for him. The reason why we really didn't talk about it is there's so many more pressing national stories. It's the same thing with a lot of national golf media. Like, if Matsuyama had won, for American media, the main story is still going to be Scottie Scheffler. That's unfortunately just the way that it is. I mean, heck, if you want to talk about an extra point, I think a lot of people in the East Coast are interested to see where Tiger Woods is going to play next. And is it going to be on the senior tour? You have Scioto Country Club hosting the U.S. Senior and the Cala Companies Championship in Akron the next week. 2 courses that really would suit Tiger Woods' eye. So, absolutely, people chase stories. That's the case in golf. That's why you don't see as many media out there walking with one golfer, because there's always a story to be had out there. Or they already know, hey, I'm going to talk to Scottie, and that's already a story. The rest is just going to be flavor of the month. That's just the case that it is. Even back in the day, maybe insert journeyman's name here wins, but everybody's talking to Tiger, and the winner has 5 guys. I can tell you when J.J. Spawn won the U.S. Open, he wasn't as big of a story. People were talking to Tyrrell Hatton. People were still talking over to Adam Scott, because for them, maybe that was the story, was that could have been Adam Scott's last real chance at winning a major championship. And time will tell if that's the truth. But in terms of stories, people love their stars. People love their big names. It's what moves the needle. So it's almost like every single writer has to obligatorily write a Tiger or a Scottie or a whomever story, because they just draw. So absolutely credit to Smiley. And take nothing away from him. It's just there was a lot going on in the golfing world these last 2 months, and unfortunately, what he did was a little bit lost in that respect. You can partially blame Liv for that and its fading star power, but you can also give credit to the fact that the PGA Tour has really put an all-out blitz, and it's created a lot of stories.
All right, thank you, David, for the question, and yeah, stretching us out a little bit here. I like it, firing from the gallery, as it were. So the stories are only going to get hotter, I think, in pro golf this year. And after a couple of years of, I would say, not necessarily stagnation, but it just felt like there was no momentum going either way. We had some blips and some news items here and there, but we could be seeing another major shift, to borrow a phrase, I suppose. March will be major. Maybe the rest of the year will be major as well. That's just the feeling I have right now as we just dig into 2026. Zach, thanks very much. Well, you'll be seeing more of Zach's work on PittsburghGolfNow.com, as well as my own stuff over there. Once we do get into the golf season, we'll have some more local events that we'll be covering. We don't have the U.S. Open this year. That was more of a banner year, obviously, last golf season for Pittsburgh Golf Now, but still more local as well as national and global golf coverage right there on the site and on our social media channels. For Zach Weiss, I'm Matt Gajtka saying good night and enjoy the golf wherever it may be.